Hi everyone. Um, we all know that India is celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, that is to say 75 years of independence. And it has been 75 years, and it's the high time we look into and discuss, deliberate what has happened to the education system in India in the last 75 years. And it is very pertinent to know when we talk about Indian education system, we divide it into school education, higher education, then comes vocational education, as technical education, etc., etc. Um, Now, when we look into when we look into our journey, that is the journey of our nation in terms of education as a whole. So let's look into what has happened. So uh, during the undivided times when you know that India, what is presently called Pakistan and Bangladesh, they were a part of United India. At that point of time, the crude literacy uh, rate was 16%, which you can understand is the total percentage of the people of an area at a particular time who can read and write with understanding. So the when we talk about undivided India, it was 16%. And at times we have heard that there was a culture of denial of education to women and marginalized classes and communities per se. So you know about this, you have heard about this. So constitution ideally should at the time when our nation got independence and the constitution was being framed, and should have ensured that education is mentioned as a fundamental right. But during the Constituent Assembly debate, discussions, it was not done so, because and non-availability of the resource was cited as a reason. Uh, but in the directive principle of state policy, within Article 45, it was mentioned that the state shall endeavor to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of the constitution for free and compulsory education for all the children until they complete the age of 14 years. Uh, yes, the constitution makers had this in mind, to provide for the right to education. But again, we know the condition of our country during the time of independence, and certainly non-availability of a resource was cited as a reason. But still, there are views and opinion that it should have been put within Part 3 of Indian Constitution, that is the fundamental right. Let's come ahead, and within the next 10 years, the literacy uh, rose by 24%. Kothari Commission was formed in 1964, and it recommended increase in government investment to 6% of GDP in education, and that should ideally have been done, considering that education education ensures that you have a human capital which can work and which can earn and then subsequently help in increasing countries' GDP. And at the same point of time, JP Nayak mentioned no political party in the country is committed to the radical reconstruction of education. I will not say that this was a reason. Possibly other things were taken into priority, but education should have been taken into priority. Uh, when we look into 1968, Indira Gandhi government announces first education policy, uh, education national policy on education in 1968, based on recommendation of the Education Commission, which I mentioned to you as a Kothari Commission. Then if we look into what happened in 1976, is by a 42nd constitutional amendment, education was taken to the concurrent list. And we know that there are three kinds of list: union list, state list, and concurrent list. And what happened next is in 1986, Rajiv Gandhi government launches new education policy focusing on adult education and empowerment of minorities. Later on, if you look into 1992, there was some modification made to this particular policy under PV Narasimha Rao government, adding a common entrance examination for professional and technical program. Now, when we go ahead from this, in 2016, new education policy by Narendra Modi government addressing gender discrimination, creation of education tribunal, and a common curriculum for science, mathematics, and English comes into the picture. Then again, 2005, new education policy was introduced. That is prior to this, an education policy was introduced by Manmohan Singh government as well in 2005, which was based on common minimum program. 2017 new education policy with certain changes was scheduled to be launched, and that was launched in year 2020. And why we are discussing all this? Because the reason is that if you want to look into how the education system in India currently is, so we need to go back and see what were the initiatives taken by the government. Operation Blackboard was launched in 1988, providing minimum essentials in a school. Uh, District Primary Education Program 1994 was launched to improve enrollment, reduce dropout, which led to hiring of some para teachers. Then Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan Sab Padhe Sab Badhe was launched in year 2000. Uh, Right to education came into existence in this country via 86 constitutional amendment. We all are aware of the same, mentioned in Article 21A. And now, when we look into this, when talked about 2005 policy, then further on, we talked about the National Education Policy 2020, which is the recent policy by the government of India. And I want to tell you that when we look into this new education policy, it is divided into four parts primarily. This education policy, first the first part deals with the education system in the country as a whole, uh, which is the most important one, that is the school education. The second part deals with higher education. So in the first part, wherein school education is mentioned, there is a mention on early childhood care and education, etc., etc. Higher education is mentioned in the part two. Quality universities and college is being discussed. Teacher education is being discussed, among other things. Equity and inclusion in higher education, that's one of the things should be looked into, and will ensure that the gross um, uh, GER particularly increases in a manner, enrollment ratio, such that it becomes 100%. And as education is for all, it should be for all. Now, the part three talk about other key areas to focus, which is professional education, adult education, and lifelong learning, technology usage, and then part four talks about how to make it happen. Yes, so certainly this policy is the one which everyone in the country who is involved with Indian higher education should read. There are certain questions which comes to our mind when we look into the state of education in our country, and particularly we see that there has been an increased focus over the years on private education. There has been a hierarchy in education, school education system. The quality has certainly been questioned at times. The increasing fees of education is another thing to be looked into. There must be a mention of a lower and the higher fees, one what an education institution can charge for a particular class, or whether when we talk about in a school or in a professional or a degree program by colleges. And certainly that will help in increasing the gross enrollment ratio for the matter. Uh, Whether unequal education can help us realize the goal of socio-economic and political justice and quality of a state is status and opportunity emphasized in Indian Constitution. See, and that is what I am talking about. The technology has at times has helped increasing the GER, has ensured that more people have can now be educated. The number of schools uh, have have doubled for that matter. And but there are certain infrastructure challenges which needs to be seen. um, and new education policy also talked about learning should be holistic, integrated, inclusive, enjoyable, and engaging. And if we are able to do all these things and truly implement the national education policy, I see that we we as a country will have a great standard of education, and that can become a role model. Uh, I must also congratulate the University Grant Commission, which has taken a very active status in the last 1 year, and several amazing initiatives are being taken by University Grant Commission, whether it is calling for CUET, whether it is mentioning about e-Samvidhan, whether it is about foreign students pursuing education in India, whether it is about Indian Higher Education Institute opening their can open their institute abroad, etc., etc. It is also called for the professor of practice. Um, and I think that the way the Indian education system is developing and the way University Grant Commission is working, in times to come, India will fulfill the desire of the world, which sees that the population of India should be educated, and certainly right to education under Article 21A can be truly seen in picture. Thank you so much.